Germany just pulled the trigger on an economic counterstrike that could cripple the entire US auto industry. And make no mistake, this isn't just a minor trade dispute. This is an all-out economic war, and the consequences are about to hit American automakers like a freight train. For decades, Germany has been the beating heart of global automobile manufacturing. Companies like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz don't just dominate the roads, they control the supply chains that keep the world's cars running. But after President Trump's administration slapped a massive 25% tariff on European car imports, Germany wasn't about to sit back and take the hit. They struck back, hard. Now, American automakers are scrambling. Key German-made components, things like high-performance transmissions, cutting-edge electronics, and precision engineering parts, are suddenly off-limits. U.S. car manufacturers that rely on these parts are being thrown into chaos, and production lines are grinding to a halt. The message from Germany is clear. If the U.S. wants a trade war, Germany is more than ready to fight back. The question is, can American automakers survive the blow, or is this the beginning of a catastrophic collapse? Let's break it down. For decades, the US and Germany have shared a complicated but mutually beneficial trade relationship in the auto industry. American consumers have long admired the engineering excellence of German cars, while US automakers have quietly depended on German technology to enhance their own vehicles. Even some of America's most iconic car brands, like Ford and General Motors, have relied on German-made components for high-performance models. But the balance has always been fragile. The US has often complained that European automakers have an unfair advantage, with German manufacturers dominating the luxury and performance segments, while still making huge profits in the American market. It was only a matter of time before tensions boiled over. And that moment arrived when President Trump announced a 25% tariff on European automobile imports, one of the most aggressive protectionist moves in recent history. The administration justified the move as a way to boost American manufacturing and reduce reliance on foreign imports. On paper, it was a patriotic play. Bring production back home, strengthen U.S. jobs, and keep American dollars circulating in American factories. But there was just one problem. The U.S. auto industry isn't built for isolationism. Germany's dominance in global car manufacturing isn't just about finished vehicles. It's about the supply chains. German automakers don't just sell cars to America. They supply critical components that American automakers can't easily replace. From advanced turbochargers to precision-engineered transmissions, German technology is embedded in the DNA of many U.S. cars. Even Tesla, the so-called future of American electric vehicles, depends on German-made engineering components to maintain its cutting-edge reputation. The moment those tariffs went into effect, Germany had a choice: accept the financial hit and keep business as usual, or fight back with a strategic counterstrike. They chose the latter. Germany's response wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. It was a meticulously calculated economic maneuver. Instead of simply imposing their own tariffs in return, they did something far more devastating. They cut off the supply of critical German-made components to the U.S., targeting the Achilles heel of the American auto industry. And the timing couldn't be worse. The global auto sector is already dealing with supply chain disruptions, rising material costs, and shifting consumer demand. With Germany's retaliation now in full effect, U.S. automakers are facing a nightmare scenario. Factories slowing down, assembly lines pausing, and costs skyrocketing. This isn't just about tariffs anymore, it's about survival. And for American automakers, the clock is ticking. Germany's counterstrike wasn't just a symbolic response. It was an economic gut punch aimed straight at the core of the U.S. auto industry. And now, American automakers are scrambling to contain the damage. First, the most devastating move: Germany has cut off the supply of key automotive components that American manufacturers desperately rely on. We're talking about high-precision transmissions, turbochargers, fuel injection systems, and cutting-edge electronics. some of the most vital elements that make modern cars work. These aren't things that can just be swapped out overnight. Many U.S. automakers have spent decades refining their vehicles with German engineering, making it almost impossible to simply shift to another supplier without completely overhauling their production processes. And it's not just the high-performance or luxury segments that are feeling the heat. Even mainstream vehicles in the U.S. market, from Ford trucks to GM sedans, have integrated German-made parts that are suddenly in short supply. Without those critical components, production lines at major American factories are slowing down, and in some cases, coming to a screeching halt. Dealerships are already reporting dwindling inventories, and some are even suspending pre-orders because they can't guarantee delivery dates. But Germany didn't stop there. In a move that sent shockwaves through Wall Street, Germany's biggest automakers, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi, announced a massive investment shift away from the U.S. Instead of expanding their production facilities in North America as planned, they're now doubling down on China and other emerging markets. Billions of dollars in potential manufacturing, job creation, and technological advancements that were once destined for the U.S. are now being redirected elsewhere. The message is loud and clear. If the United States insists on closing its doors to fair trade, Germany is more than happy to take its business elsewhere. And then came the final blow. Germany has slapped heavy tariffs on American-made vehicles, making them dramatically more expensive for European buyers. This is a nightmare scenario for U.S. automakers like Ford and General Motors, which have spent years building their presence in Europe. These companies rely on international sales to remain profitable, and without access to the European market, they're facing massive financial losses. Tesla, which had been aggressively expanding in Europe, is now looking at a devastating price increase on its vehicles due to the new tariffs. That means a Tesla made in the US could suddenly cost thousands of dollars more for European customers, making German and Chinese electric vehicles a far more attractive option. And just like that, American automakers are getting squeezed out of one of the most lucrative car markets in the world. The impact of these moves is already rippling through the stock market. Within days of Germany's retaliation, shares of major U.S. automakers plummeted, wiping out billions in market value. Investors are panicking, unsure of how long this trade war will last, and whether companies like Ford and GM will be able to withstand the financial pressure. Meanwhile, Germany is making sure its own economy doesn't suffer in the process. Instead of waiting for the dust to settle, German automakers are aggressively expanding into new markets, forging stronger partnerships with China, India, and even Latin America. They're making sure that whatever revenue they might lose from the US will be more than made up for elsewhere. What's happening right now is bigger than just a dispute between two countries. This is a fundamental shift in global auto manufacturing, one that could change the balance of power in the industry for years to come. The U.S. wanted to protect its automakers with tariffs, but in doing so, it may have pushed Germany into new alliances that could permanently sideline American car companies. And here's the harsh reality. Germany holds the upper hand in this trade war. The U.S. auto industry is far more dependent on German technology than Germany is on selling cars in America. Germany can afford to pivot to new markets, but for the U.S., finding new suppliers for critical components is going to take years, time that American car manufacturers simply don't have. So what happens next? Can U.S. automakers find a way to survive without German parts? Or will this trade war spiral into an even bigger economic disaster? The answers to those questions could determine the future of the American auto industry. And right now, things aren't looking good. Why does it matter? The fallout from this trade war isn't just a corporate problem. It's about to hit millions of American workers, consumers, and the broader economy in ways few saw coming. This isn't just about CEOs losing profits or stock prices tumbling. This is about the entire foundation of the U.S. auto industry shaking under the weight of Germany's counterstrike. The first and most immediate consequence? Job losses. The American auto industry supports nearly 1 million manufacturing jobs. And that's not counting the millions more in supply chain businesses, dealerships, and logistics companies that depend on steady car production. With German components now off the table, automakers are scrambling to find replacements. But that's not an easy fix. Factories that rely on German engineering can't simply switch suppliers overnight. Redesigning a supply chain takes years, and that's time these companies don't have. Some production lines have already slowed down, and if the standoff continues, mass layoffs are inevitable. And then there's the consumer impact. Prices for American cars are already going up. With supply chain disruptions and higher production costs, automakers are passing the pain directly to buyers. If you are planning to buy a new car in the coming months, prepare to pay more, much more. Even if you're not in the market for a high-end luxury vehicle, you'll feel the hit. German-made components aren't just used in high-performance cars. They're found in everything from family SUVs to hybrid sedans. That means price increases across the board, even for the most budget-friendly models. But it's not just about higher prices. It's about availability. Dealerships across the country are already seeing shortages, and some are even suspending pre-orders because they can't guarantee when cars will arrive. The used car market, which has already seen skyrocketing prices over the past few years, is about to explode even higher as demand shifts away from unavailable new models. The stock market is also in turmoil. The moment Germany retaliated, investors panicked. Ford, General Motors, and Tesla saw their stock prices plunge as analysts began calculating the real damage of Germany's move. Billion-dollar losses in market value happened within days, and Wall Street is still trying to figure out how bad this could get. If the trade war drags on, we could see a full-blown industry recession, with automakers cutting spending, delaying new models, and scaling back research and development. And the biggest irony? The tariffs were meant to protect American jobs. The whole idea behind this trade war was to keep the auto industry strong and encourage more domestic manufacturing. But instead, the exact opposite is happening. Factories are in crisis, jobs are at risk, and the cost of owning a car in America is about to skyrocket. Meanwhile, Germany is barely feeling the heat. While U.S. automakers are stuck in limbo, German companies are doubling down on China, India, and Latin America. They're securing new trade deals, forming stronger alliances, and cementing their dominance in the global auto market. If this continues, Germany won't just survive this trade war. They'll come out stronger than ever, while the U.S. struggles to recover. This isn't just an economic skirmish, it's a power shift. If the U.S. auto industry doesn't find a way to navigate this crisis fast, it could lose its global influence for good. Counter-reactions and conflicts. The White House isn't taking Germany's counterattack lightly. In response to the backlash, the U.S. government is already weighing emergency measures to soften the blow on American automakers. Some insiders suggest direct subsidies could be on the table, providing financial relief to car manufacturers struggling with supply chain disruptions. Others argue that further tariffs could be imposed on European goods, doubling down on the economic standoff. But here's the problem: Washington is running out of options. The biggest issue American automakers face isn't just money, it's time. Even if the government steps in with emergency aid, it won't change the fact that Germany controlled the supply chains. Finding alternative sources for these components, whether from Japan, South Korea, or domestic suppliers, is a logistical nightmare. It could take years to fully replace the German-made parts that many American cars depend on, years that the industry simply doesn't have. And automakers know this. That's why, behind the scenes, companies like Ford, General Motors, and even Tesla are reportedly lobbying the government to de-escalate the trade war. While no automaker wants to publicly admit they're feeling the pressure, the reality is clear. They need Germany's components, and they need them now. Meanwhile, unions are furious. The United Auto Workers, UAW, has already sounded the alarm, warning that the trade war could lead to the biggest wave of layoffs since the 2008 financial crisis. They're demanding immediate government intervention, not in the form of more tariffs, but in negotiating a deal to reopen trade. The pressure is mounting on the administration. to find a diplomatic solution before the damage becomes irreversible. At the same time, Germany is doubling down. Instead of backing off, German automakers are using this moment to accelerate their global expansion. Reports indicate that Mercedes-Benz and BMW are planning new manufacturing hubs in China, while Volkswagen is solidifying its partnerships in India. If the US thought these tariffs would force Germany into submission, it's becoming painfully clear that the opposite is happening. Germany is moving forward, while America is stuck playing defense. The big question now is, how far will this escalate? Will the US push ahead with even more protectionist policies, or will economic realities force a retreat? If things don't change fast, American automakers may find themselves permanently sidelined from the global auto market. And that's a scenario that could haunt the industry for decades to come. Future implications. This isn't just a temporary crisis for the US auto industry. If this trade war continues, the long-term consequences could reshape the global economy and permanently weaken America's position in the automotive sector. What started as an attempt to protect American jobs has now snowballed into a crisis that could push US automakers to the brink of collapse. If this standoff drags on, the worst-case scenario is clear. American car manufacturers, unable to source critical components, will be forced to cut production even further. Factories that once operated at full capacity will sit idle. Workers who have spent years assembling some of the world's most popular vehicles will find themselves without jobs. And with production delays stretching from weeks to months, consumers will face skyrocketing prices and dwindling choices on dealership lots. The used car market, already inflated, will become even more inaccessible for the average buyer. But it's not just a US problem. The longer this dispute continues, the more it risks spiraling into a full-blown global trade war. Other nations, watching closely, could choose sides and impose their own restrictions. Countries like Japan and South Korea, both of which have major stakes in the auto industry, may rethink their trade relationships with the US, fearing they could be next in line for tariffs. The European Union, already standing firm behind Germany, could implement even tougher economic measures against the United States, widening the divide between America and its longtime allies. And while the US struggles, Germany isn't wasting any time. They're taking advantage of this crisis to secure their foothold in new markets. In China, German automakers are strengthening their partnerships, investing billions into factories that will soon be producing the next generation of luxury and electric vehicles. In India, Volkswagen and BMW are expanding their presence, looking to capture a growing middle-class market. The more Germany builds these relationships, the less they need the United States at all. If the US doesn't find a way to resolve this crisis soon, it risks falling behind permanently. In just a few years, we could see a world where Germany and China dominate the auto industry, while American manufacturers struggle to compete. And once those supply chains are gone, once those relationships are severed, rebuilding them won't be easy. It could take decades for the US to recover its former position. The clock is ticking. Either Washington and the auto industry find a way to de-escalate this trade war, or they risk watching America's global influence in the auto sector fade away, possibly for good. So now the question is, what happens next? Does the US back down and try to repair trade relations before it's too late? Or do we double down on protectionist policies, even if it means crippling one of America's most important industries? What do you think? Is Germany playing smart, or is this trade war getting out of control? Should the US government hold its ground, or is it time for a new strategy before the damage becomes irreversible? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown insightful, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into global economic conflicts. We cover the biggest shifts in finance, trade, and geopolitics, so you always know what's really happening behind the headlines. And if you want to see how China and Japan are shaking up the global bond market, click on the next video now. The financial war isn't just limited to cars, and the next economic shockwave might be even bigger than this one. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one. This isn't just about tariffs anymore. It's about survival. And for American automakers, the clock is ticking. Germany's counterstrike wasn't just a symbolic response.